Welcome back to The Pages Between Us, the podcast where we don't just read books, we move into them. We live in them. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Ralph. If you are looking for a fast, quick summary of a plot, you are definitely in the wrong place. But if you want to pull up a chair, grab a hot drink, and spend the next hour tearing apart a classic story line by line to see how brilliant writers actually weave their magic, you are exactly where you belong.
Today, we are deep diving into Kate Chopin's famous piece, The Story of an Hour. Now, for our friends listening who are studying English or learning how to write their own stories, this is a masterclass in irony and subtle character development. Ralph, before we hit the first line, what is your relationship with this story?
Oh, I remember reading this years ago and it completely blew my mind because the author does something very brave. She talks about a topic that people in the late 1800s were absolutely terrified to talk about openly: the hidden traps of marriage and the desire for total personal freedom.
Exactly. It is short in length, but incredibly heavy in meaning. Let's look at the very first sentence of the text. Ralph, read us how this journey begins.
The story opens immediately with a medical warning. Knowing that Mrs. Mallard was afflicted with a heart trouble, great care was taken to break to her as gently as possible the news of her husband's death.
Let's stop right there. Afflicted with a heart trouble. That is a massive literary clue, isn't it? On a literal level, she has a weak heart. If someone scares her or gives her shocking news, it could physically kill her. But metaphorically, what is happening here?
Metaphorically, her heart trouble is her marriage. Her heart is restricted, heavy, and unfulfilled. It's a brilliant double meaning. And look at who is delivering the news: her sister, Josephine, and her husband's friend, Richards. They are speaking in broken sentences, dropping hints, trying not to shock her system.
Richards was at the newspaper office when the intelligence of a railroad disaster was received. And right there at the top of the list of the deceased was the name, Brentley Mallard.
Let's look at how Louise reacts. Because the author makes a point to tell us that Louise did not react the way normal society expected women to react. The text says, she did not hear the story as many women would have heard it, with a paralyzed inability to accept its truth.
That word, paralyzed inability. Usually, when someone hears that a loved one has died, they freeze. They go numb. They say, no, it can't be true. There must be a mistake. But Louise doesn't do that. She skips the denial completely. Why do you think that is?
Because deep down, in a place she hasn't even admitted to herself yet, she knows it's real. And instead of freezing, she immediately explodes into tears. The author writes that she wept at once with sudden, wild abandonment in her sister's arms.
Let's break down that phrase for our English learners out there: wild abandonment. In everyday conversation, if you abandon a car, you leave it on the side of the road. But in literature, if you do something with abandonment, it means you have completely thrown away your self-control. You are letting your emotions run completely wild, without caring what anyone thinks of you.
It's a beautiful, violent release of energy. But then, the storm passes. The text says, when the storm of grief had spent itself, she went away to her room alone. She would have no one follow her.
Now, this is where the real deep dive begins. Louise locks herself in her room upstairs. This is Act 2. Ralph, set the scene for us. What does she see when she sits down?
She sinks into a comfortable, roomy armchair. She is physically exhausted, and her body feels completely heavy. But right in front of that chair is an open window. And through that open window, the entire world is coming alive.
Let's really look at the sensory details here, because they are incredibly strange for a woman who just found out her husband died. The author writes that she could see the tops of trees that were all aquiver with the new spring life. The delicious breath of rain was in the air.
Wait, let's look at that word. Aquiver. It comes from the verb to quiver, which means to shake or tremble slightly with excitement or emotion. The trees aren't dead or gloomy, they are trembling with new life. And the rain isn't described as cold or miserable, it's a delicious breath.
And that's not all. She hears a street peddler crying his wares in the street below. She hears notes of a distant song someone is singing, and countless sparrows are twittering under the eaves of the roof. There are patches of blue sky showing through the clouds.
This is pure juxtaposition. Inside the room, we have a grieving widow dressed in black. Outside the window, we have spring, music, birds singing, and blue skies. The physical world outside is rejecting her grief. It is shouting at her that life goes on, and that life is beautiful.
She sits completely still, with her head thrown back against the cushion of the chair. Her eyes are fixed on one of those patches of blue sky. The text says she wasn't looking with a glance of reflection, but rather with a look that indicated a suspension of intelligent thought.
Ooh, explain that. What does a suspension of intelligent thought mean?
It means she turned her brain off. She isn't logically thinking, what am I going to do for money? How will I pay for a funeral? She has stopped thinking completely because her body and her soul are waiting for something to hit her. There is something creeping out of the sky, moving toward her through the sounds, the scents, and the color of the air.
This is the moment where the story turns into a psychological thriller. Louise feels this emotion coming toward her, and she is actually terrified of it. The text says she was waiting for it, fearfully. She tries to fight it back with her physical will, but she is too weak.
And then, she gives up the fight. A little word escapes from her lips. She whispers it under her breath, free, free, free.
Wow, can you imagine the scandal of writing that in 1894? A woman finding out her husband is dead, sitting alone in a room, and whispering the word free?
It's incredible. And look at the physical transformation that happens the moment she says the word. The text says her blank stare went away from her eyes. They stayed keen and bright. Her pulse beat fast, and the coursing blood warmed and relaxed every single inch of her body.
Let's look at the vocabulary there. Coursing blood. To course means to run or flow rapidly. The news of her husband's death didn't freeze her or kill her, it woke her up. It jump-started her heart.
She doesn't even stop to ask if this joy is a wicked thing or a sin. She knows it's real. She realizes that she will cry again when she sees his kind, tender hands folded in death. She knows she will cry when she sees his face, which had never looked at her with anything but love.
Exactly. Brentley Mallard wasn't an abusive husband. He wasn't a monster. He was a good man. But Louise realizes a deeper truth about human relationships. She realizes that marriage itself, even a kind marriage, is a prison. The text says, there would be no powerful will bending hers in that blind persistence with which men and women believe they have a right to impose a private will upon a fellow creature.
That is the most powerful sentence in the entire piece. To impose a private will. Even when you love someone, when you are married, you are constantly forcing your choices, your schedule, and your desires onto them. And she realizes that for the rest of her life, she doesn't have to compromise with anyone. She belongs entirely to herself. There would be no powerful will bending hers in that blind persistence with which men and women believe they have a right to impose a private will upon a fellow creature.
She breathes a quick prayer that life might be long. Just yesterday, she had thought with a shudder that life might be long, because she was trapped. Now, she wants to live forever.
But while she is celebrating her freedom in her bedroom, her sister Josephine is outside the door on her knees, begging through the keyhole. Louise, open the door. I beg. Open the door, you will make yourself ill.
Oh, the dramatic irony. Josephine thinks Louise is inside destroying herself with grief. But Louise is actually drinking in a literal elixir of life through that open window.
Finally, she stands up and opens the door. There is a feverish triumph in her eyes. She clasps her sister's waist, and together, they walk down the stairs. Richards is waiting at the bottom.
And right as they reach the bottom of the stairs, someone is opening the front door with a latchkey.
It is Brentley Mallard. He was nowhere near the accident. He didn't even know there was an accident. He stands there, a little dusty, holding his umbrella and his bag.
Oh my goodness. Imagine the scene. Josephine screams. Richards tries to step in front of Brentley to hide him from Louise's view so she doesn't get a sudden shock to her weak heart. But it is too late.
The doctors come to the house later. And the final line of the story is famous worldwide. When the doctors came, they said she had died of heart disease, of the joy that kills.
Wow, the joy that kills. The doctors thought she was so happy to see her husband alive that her weak heart gave out. But the reader knows the truth. She died of absolute horror because her one taste of freedom was just snatched away from her.
What an incredible ending. We are going to pause our deep dive there today. What do you think about Louise's reaction? Was she a villain, or was she just a human being craving freedom? Let us know in the comments below, and we will see you in the next chapter.
Keep reading, everyone.